What's going on, ALC? It's Pastor Trey. I'm so thankful to have another opportunity to bring the word to your small groups tonight, believing that God has something special to equip all of us with, to encourage us, and to just challenge us, as family is the topic that we've been talking about. And as we talk about family, we talk about a lot of different dynamics. And so we're just going to go straight into it. We're going to dive pretty deep tonight. And so the question that we're going to be talking about is, how can you teach God's ways to your family for better results? We're going to be bringing Jesus into our family so that we can receive some better results. And that can be intimidating. That could be, oh, Jesus, you got to take control. Jesus, take the wheel. Here's the keys to everything. And we're going to be talking about why it's important to have the keys of Jesus. But I'm going to just say it right now. If you don't have Jesus in your family, you're missing out. So let's go ahead and let's prove the fact on why we need to have Jesus in our families to have better results. And we're going to read in 1 Chronicles chapter 28 verse 9, and it says, "And Solomon my son learned to know the God of your ancestors intimately. Worship and serve with him with your whole heart and a willing mind. For the Lord sees every heart and knows every plan and thought. If you seek him, you will find him. But if you forsake him, he will reject you forever." So that might be like oh shoot, I got to make sure I got this right. But during this time, we got to recognize during this time, David is finally at a place where he can accomplish a desire in his heart that he has been given, a goal that he has. And during this chapter, you can read that David is finally at the place that he wants to build the Lord's temple. And when he wants to build the Lord's temple, he has ideas, and you can see just the list of things that he has already organized to figure out how we're going to make it happen, how they're going to make it happen. But he has this desire to make this wonderful, magnificent temple, and he has this plan and goals that honestly sound really, really cool and that he's going to be able to achieve. But here's the moment where he was challenged by God with this. And so David finally has that time and place to accomplish building that temple, and David's been pleasing God. He's been the king over Israel. He's been leading people, and he's been allowing God to be a part of his leadership, a part of his story, about a part of his truth. And here it comes. God has a little change of ideas here, and God has a little change of plans, and God's desire was actually to use the goals and desires that David had, but David's son Solomon would be the one that actually orchestrate is and in charge of bringing the Lord's temple up. And I think that had a lot of sacrifice for David, and David's a king here, and he had a lot of sacrifice in this. But how cool is it though that God wanted to use, through David's blessing, through David's faithfulness, he wanted to use his next up. He wanted to use his successor. He wanted to use his son that's going to take the throne, Solomon, to actually be the one to fulfill the desires of building the Lord's temple. And so Solomon is getting positioned to be in charge with faithfulness, just like his father before him in King David. And so Solomon is getting prepared to take the lead. He's going to take a massive task head on. But though David did help instruct Solomon, and as you read further, you actually see how David helped instruct Solomon about the logistics of the temple. But I love that the first thing that David said before all of that was how Solomon needs to make sure that he is serving the Lord before all things. Before all of it took place, the very first thing, even though there was a magnificent plan on building this temple, the very first thing that David told Solomon is that you need to make sure that you give it to the Lord, that you honor him in all things, and that you lift him in all things. And so he's laying down a foundation, he's laying down a principle at the very beginning of this. And so at that moment, David is showing his priorities to Solomon. His priority was to worship and to serve God. And before any of his works, before any of his task, his number one desire was to just accomplish the fact that he wanted to serve the Lord. He wanted to bless Jesus. He wanted to bless God, I should say. And so when that takes place, you have to ask yourself, how can you teach God's ways to your family for better results? And we find these principles through David. And the first thing is, give God the keys to your home. So point number one is give God the keys to your home. David gave the keys to his home to Jesus, to God. And when he gave God those keys, it immediately impacted his successors. It immediately impacted Solomon. And so a quick, just practical ways that for me and how I give the keys to my home to God is, and that helps influence my daughter, my little girl, Amaya. What we try to do, and what Jamie and I really try to do, is we try to have, Jamie's really good about this, about having a quick little devotionals every morning, every time before we go to work, every time we go to drop her off. The very first thing in the morning, Jamie loves to do quick little devotionals with sweet little Amaya. And then throughout the day, we show principles throughout what the Word says. And then what I always look forward to is by the time that Amaya is going to sleep, I have the opportunity to just sit with her, whether it's for a quick 30 seconds or whether it's for 3 minutes or just a short amount of time. What I love to do is just pray over her and bless her rest and bless her sleep and pray for protection over her. And I always pray, Lord, I just pray for Amaya to have a wonderful night's rest, a rest of peace, a rest of joy. And when that takes place, it is something that we are inviting God, but at that time we are practically giving God the keys to our home. And we're trying to show Amaya, when you give the keys to your home in all things, he is going to reward you. And I believe that God blesses Amaya, and I believe that God blesses Amaya through Jamie's ministry, through devotionals, and through my ministry to her, through her prayers. And I believe that there's so many great things that can come from that. But the goal is for us to start building a foundation and a culture of God's way in our home. And I think it's very important for you, when you give the keys to God, you need to be receiving God's culture. When you give the keys to your home, then you're wanting to have God's culture within your home. And you better believe that there is a culture of God, and there is definitely a culture in his ways. And so when you give that, man, it is powerful, it is beautiful, it is joyful, it's peaceful, and it really does, like I pray over it gives you rest. It really does in your own home. And so it's an incredible reminder of the Lord's faithfulness when he is the one that helps us achieve our goals. When the people in your family witness God's favor over your life, they will eventually want a piece of that pie. Because God's favor is more than just making ends meet or helping us achieve a task. God's favor is a peace that goes before you even when there is all the excuse in the world to be anxious and worried. When we give God everything, when we invite him into our homes, when we give him the keys to our home, when we build a culture of God in our home, in our place of rest, I am telling you, not just you, but the family surrounded by you, your kids, your grandkids, your aunts, your nephews, your nieces, all of it, I'm telling you, when you give God the keys to your home and the culture just overcomes and encompasses your home, things that are normal to be worried about, things that are normal to be anxious about, just don't take control of you anymore, because you have rest in Jesus. You have rest in God, and you've said, God, I've given you the keys. I've given you the authority over this home. So therefore, even when I am worried, you give me peace. And so we need to position ourselves to allow God to be the keeper of our hearts. Then the people you are surrounded by will also witness the gracious results of what it looks like to be in sync with the Lord. And just think about that, process that. What am I doing to be in sync with the Lord? Am I allowing myself to be in sync with the Lord? And point number 2 of how can you teach God's ways to your family for better results is, like David, give your legacy to God. In American culture, we're all about building legacy. We're all about just building a name and a reputation. But man, maybe it's time for us to no longer build a legacy for ourselves, but give God our legacy and allow Him to take our legacy to the next level. We need to allow God to have everything about ourselves, to live it out by example. One of the greatest ways to display God-like results is by the legacy and definition of your life. And by this, it means everything points back to Christ. I have peace in my finances because I have given my finances to God. I have peace with my health circumstance because I have given all health-related issues to God. I have peace with my children because I have dedicated my family to God. I even have peace with death because I have given my life to Christ. And when we give those things and we point everything, we point our legacy back to God, there is a peace that overcomes all understanding. And the legacy that David was leaving was one such as that. David was able to accomplish so many things because he allowed God to maintain the control over his life. And even when David made mistakes, he even gave those to God. So regardless, you're making the right decision or you messed up, give it all to God because it's your legacy that God can control. It's your legacy that you can give to God that can ultimately, in God's wonderful way, change somebody's life. And it can ultimately change your family's life. And when your family's searching for results and your family's digging for something, you're trying to say, God, I need breakthrough. God, I need this to happen. God, I want that to happen. When you give God your legacy, He is going to be the one that grabs the shovel for you, and He's going to help guide you with His strength, and He's going to help you dig out of sticky situations, but also He's going to give you a blessing on top of that when you give God your legacy. So when you have a desire to have God help your family achieve great results, then you need to be willing to hand over the keys and allow Him to use your life to build a legacy for His goodness, to build a legacy for His purpose. And every breath that you take no longer is a breath for just you, but it's a breath for you and the kingdom of God. And I'm telling you, when you do that, it changes everything. So I'm going to challenge you guys. Go give God the keys for your family better results, and then go give God your legacy so that your family can follow behind that example and be blessed with wonderful results through your sacrifice, through their sacrifice, and ultimately through the blessing of Jesus. I love you guys. I'm so thankful to have this opportunity. We're going to have some discussion questions after all of this. I encourage you guys to go into another level with each other, challenge each other, and hold each other accountable in a way that ultimately gives your family better results.